The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. It was a typical evening in Maple Grove, the kind of place where life seemed to crawl at its own leisurely pace. Birds chirped in the trees, a gentle breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass, and somewhere in the distance, the hum of a motorcycle grew louder. That hum belonged to Dirk Harrington, a biker with a penchant for causing trouble wherever he went. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Dirk wasn't the kind of man to blend into the background. His presence was a storm cloud rolling into an otherwise sunny day. Tattoos snaked up his muscular arms. His leather vest bore patches from countless biker clubs, and his grizzled beard made him look older than his 36 years. His motorcycle was his pride and joy, a gleaming black Harley-Davidson with chrome accents that sparkled in the sunlight. But Dirk had another pastime, one far less admirable than riding his beloved bike. For reasons no one could quite fathom, Dirk had developed an unsettling habit of tormenting animals, particularly dogs. To him, it was all a joke, a way to assert dominance over the world around him. He would kick at dogs as he sped past on his bike, laughing at their frightened yelps and the fury of their owners. Most were too stunned or afraid to confront him, and Dirk thrived on their silence. One summer evening, Dirk roared down Birchwood Lane, his tires screeching as he took a sharp turn. His keen eyes caught movement up ahead, a group of dogs frolicking in a yard enclosed by a low picket fence. His lips curled into a wicked grin. With a quick twist of the throttle, he sped toward the yard, his booted foot ready to lash out. The dogs scattered as Dirk's bike neared, their barks turning to panicked whines. But one dog didn't retreat. A large, regal-looking golden retriever stood its ground near the fence, its amber eyes locking onto Dirk's. This was Patton, a dog known to every child and parent in Maple Grove as the epitome of loyalty and good nature. Patton wasn't just any pet, he was a companion, a protector, and unbeknownst to Dirk, the cherished dog of Barron Trump. Barron, now a teenager, had recently moved to Maple Grove to escape the glaring spotlight of his family's political fame. The quiet town offered solace, a stark contrast to the chaos of the world he had grown up in. Patton had been a gift from his father years ago, a steadfast companion through thick and thin. To Barron, Patton was more than a dog, he was family. On this fateful evening, Barron was inside the house practicing his guitar in the living room when he heard the commotion outside. The frantic barking was unmistakable. He dropped his instrument and bolted to the window just in time to see Dirk's outstretched boot connect with Patton's side. The sound of impact was sickening, a dull thud that echoed in the stillness. Patton stumbled but didn't fall, his tail tucked between his legs as he limped toward the porch. Fury boiled within Barron. He threw open the door and sprinted outside, his long strides carrying him across the yard in seconds. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. Dirk glanced over his shoulder but didn't stop. The biker's laughter rang out, mocking and cruel, as he disappeared down the street. Barron knelt beside Patton, his hands trembling as he examined the dog for injuries. The golden retriever whined softly, licking Barron's hand as if to reassure him. Despite the pain, Patton's gentle eyes remained steady, a testament to his unyielding spirit. But Barron wasn't reassured. His jaw tightened, and his blue eyes hardened with resolve. Whoever had done this would pay. The next morning, news of the incident spread through Maple Grove like wildfire. Barron had contacted the local authorities, providing a description of the biker and his motorcycle. The community, outraged by the attack on their beloved Patton, rallied behind Barron. Flyers with sketches of Dirk's bike were plastered on telephone poles, and social media buzzed with calls for justice. Dirk, meanwhile, was oblivious to the storm he had stirred. He lounged at the Rusty Spoke, a grimy biker bar on the outskirts of town, nursing a beer and bragging about his latest escapade. "That dog didn't know what hit it!" he crowed, slapping his knee as the other bikers chuckled nervously. Most of them didn't share Dirk's twisted sense of humor, but they knew better than to cross him. As the days passed, Dirk began to notice something strange. Wherever he went, he felt the weight of accusing eyes. Strangers glared at him in the grocery store, and passing drivers honked angrily. At first, he dismissed it as paranoia, but the tension in the air was undeniable. It wasn't long before one of his biker buddies tipped him off. "You've got a target on your back, man," the friend warned. "That dog you kicked? It belongs to Barron Trump." Dirk's blood ran cold. He knew the name all too well, though he'd never expected to cross paths with the youngest member of the Trump dynasty. The thought of tangling with such a powerful family was enough to make even Dirk uneasy, but his pride wouldn't allow him to admit fear. "So what?" he sneered. "Kid's just like anyone else, he can't touch me." But Barron wasn't just anyone, and he wasn't about to let Dirk get away unscathed. With the support of the community, Barron launched a campaign to hold Dirk accountable. He worked tirelessly, coordinating with local law enforcement, organizing rallies, and even speaking at town hall meetings. His poise and determination impressed everyone, earning him respect far beyond his years. As pressure mounted, Dirk's bravado began to crack. His usual haunts grew unwelcoming, and his fellow bikers started to distance themselves. The Rusty Spoke banned him after an angry mob showed up outside, demanding justice for Patton. Dirk's once untouchable reputation crumbled, leaving him isolated and vulnerable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dirk found himself cornered in an empty parking lot. Barron stood before him, flanked by a group of supporters. Patton was there too, his tail wagging despite the lingering soreness from the attack. The sight of the dog's unwavering loyalty only fueled Barron's resolve. "You've got two choices," Barron said, his voice calm but firm. "Turn yourself in and face the consequences, or keep running and let this town chew you up and spit you out." Dirk's shoulders slumped. He knew he was beaten. With a heavy sigh, he nodded. "All right, kid," he muttered. "You win." The following week, Dirk was arrested and charged with animal cruelty. The trial was swift, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. He was sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling, along with a hefty fine. The court also ordered him to issue a public apology to Barron and the community. Standing before a crowd in the Maple Grove town square, Dirk swallowed his pride and spoke. "I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, but kicking that dog was the lowest. I'm sorry. To Patton, to his owner, and to all of you." The apology was met with polite applause, though forgiveness would take time. For Barron, the victory wasn't just about justice for Patton. It was a testament to the power of standing up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. In the weeks that followed, life in Maple Grove returned to its peaceful rhythm. Patton recovered fully, his boundless energy and playful spirit undimmed. Barron continued to grow into his own, his quiet strength earning the admiration of all who knew him. As for Dirk, he spent his days picking up trash along the highway and volunteering at the local animal shelter, a condition of his sentence. The experience humbled him, forcing him to confront the pain he had caused. Over time, he began to change, finding redemption in the very creatures he had once tormented. And so the small town of Maple Grove moved forward, its sense of community stronger than ever. Dirk's reign of terror was over, and Patton's story became a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light has a way of breaking through. As the weeks passed, the incident in Maple Grove took on a life of its own, becoming a defining moment, not just for the town, but for everyone involved. What began as an isolated act of cruelty had spiraled into a profound story of justice, community, and redemption, with reverberations far beyond what anyone had anticipated. For Barron Trump, life after the confrontation with Dirk Harrington shifted dramatically. The quiet, understated existence he had sought in Maple Grove was replaced with a newfound role as a community leader. Though still a teenager, his handling of the situation had resonated deeply with people across town. Invitations poured in from local organizations, asking him to speak about the importance of standing up for animal rights and fostering a sense of unity. Barron, reluctant at first, soon found himself embracing this new chapter. Speaking in front of audiences didn't come naturally to him, but his sincerity and compassion won people over. He told the story of Patton, not as a victim, but as a symbol of resilience and unconditional love. He shared how the golden retriever had been a source of strength for him during difficult times, helping him navigate the pressures of growing up in a high-profile family. To Barron, Patton wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder of what it meant to give and receive kindness without expecting anything in return. One of Barron's most memorable speeches was at the local elementary school, where children sat cross-legged on the gym floor, their eyes wide with curiosity. He spoke not only about the importance of treating animals with respect, but also about the power of standing up to bullies, whether they target pets, people, or anyone unable to defend themselves. The applause was thunderous, and by the end of the event, every child seemed to want a golden retriever of their own. Meanwhile, Dirk Harrington's life was undergoing an equally transformative change. Community service at the animal shelter was not the punishment he had feared. It became something far more profound. At first, Dirk approached the work with his usual surly demeanor, doing the bare minimum to fulfill his obligations. But as days turned into weeks, something began to shift. The shelter was home to dozens of dogs, each with its own story of hardship. Dirk found himself drawn to them despite himself. There was Daisy, a timid beagle who had been rescued from neglect, and Max, a one-eyed pit bull who had survived a cruel past. Watching these animals, Dirk began to see the consequences of the kind of cruelty he had once thoughtlessly inflicted. For the first time in years, he felt shame. Not the fleeting embarrassment of getting caught, but a deep, gnawing remorse that kept him awake at night. One morning, as Dirk cleaned out kennels, a shelter volunteer named Ellie approached him. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a quiet strength that made her instantly likable. Ellie had been working at the shelter for over a decade and had seen her share of broken animals and broken people. "You've got a good way with them," Ellie said, nodding toward Max, who wagged his tail as Dirk scratched behind his ear. Dirk shrugged, his voice gruff. "Don't know about that," Ellie smiled. "Animals don't lie, they trust you, even if you don't trust yourself." Her words stayed with Dirk long after she walked away. Over time, he began to open up, sharing bits and pieces of his life with Ellie. He told her about his troubled childhood, the anger that had simmered inside him for as long as he could remember, and the mistakes that had defined him. Ellie listened without judgment, her quiet presence a balm for wounds Dirk hadn't realized were still raw. Through his work at the shelter, Dirk discovered a newfound sense of purpose. He started volunteering even on days he wasn't required to, spending hours training the dogs to prepare them for adoption. The animals, in turn, taught him lessons he hadn't expected. They forgave easily, trusted quickly, and loved unconditionally, all things Dirk had struggled with for years. Back in Maple Grove, Barron's efforts to advocate for animal welfare began to snowball. He teamed up with local activists to launch a campaign called Paws for Justice, aimed at preventing animal cruelty and promoting responsible pet ownership. The campaign quickly gained traction with fundraisers, educational workshops, and adoption drives, bringing the community together like never before. One of the campaign's most ambitious projects was the creation of a new dog park in Maple Grove. Barron spearheaded the effort, working with town officials to secure funding and volunteers to build the park. It became a labor of love, with people of all ages pitching in to lay sod, install fencing, and construct agility courses for the dogs. By the time the park was finished, it was more than just a place for pets to play. It was a testament to what the community could achieve when they came together. The grand opening of the park was a momentous occasion. Families gathered with their dogs who barked and wagged their tails in excitement. A ribbon-cutting ceremony marked the official launch, with Barron and Patton at the center of it all. The golden retriever, now fully recovered, bounded across the grass, his joy infectious. The sight brought tears to more than a few eyes, a reminder of how far they had all come since that fateful evening. As for Dirk, he found himself drawn to the park as well. Though still somewhat of an outsider, he had begun to forge tentative connections with the community. People were wary at first, but Dirk's actions spoke louder than his past. He brought Max, the one-eyed pit bull, to the park regularly, proudly showing off the tricks they had learned together. Seeing Dirk with Max, a dog who had once been considered unadoptable, softened even the harshest critics. One day, Dirk and Barron crossed paths at the park. It was the first time they had spoken since the parking lot confrontation. For a moment, there was an awkward silence as they sized each other up. Then Barron extended his hand. "Thanks for turning things around," he said simply. Dirk hesitated, then shook Barron's hand. "Guess I owed it to that dog, and to myself." The handshake marked a turning point, not just for the two of them, but for the entire town. It was a moment of reconciliation, proof that even the most broken among them could find redemption. Months turned into years, and the events surrounding Patton and Dirk became the stuff of local legend. Children who had once listened to Barron's speeches grew up with a deeper understanding of compassion and responsibility. The dog park became a cherished gathering place, its existence a lasting symbol of unity. And Dirk Harrington, once a feared and hated figure, became an unlikely advocate for animal welfare, using his story to educate others about the consequences of cruelty. As years passed, the story of Patton and Dirk Harrington etched itself into the fabric of Maple Grove's collective memory. What began as an act of cruelty and defiance had blossomed into a tale of growth and change that continued to inspire long after the dust had settled. For both Barron Trump and Dirk Harrington, the events shaped their lives in ways neither could have predicted, leaving a legacy that extended far beyond their small town. The dog park Barron helped create became a cornerstone of Maple Grove's social life. It wasn't merely a place for pets to run and play. It became a hub of connection, where neighbors gathered, friendships were forged, and bonds deepened. Over time, the park expanded, thanks to the funds raised by Barron's Paws for Justice initiative. New amenities were added: shaded pavilions, a doggy splash pad for hot summers, and even a small memorial garden dedicated to rescued animals who had passed on. The community pride that stemmed from the park spread across Maple Grove. Inspired by Barron's leadership, residents began tackling other issues. A derelict lot near the town center was transformed into a vibrant community garden, and a rundown playground was rebuilt into a safe, colorful haven for children. The town's once sluggish civic engagement had been reignited, and it all traced back to a teenager's determination to seek justice for his dog. By the time Barron Trump left for college, he was no longer just the quiet kid who had moved to Maple Grove. He had grown into a confident young man, shaped by the love of his dog and the support of his community. He chose to major in environmental science, inspired by the time he had spent outdoors in Maple Grove and the lessons he had learned about the interconnectedness of all living things. Even from afar, Barron kept tabs on Maple Grove. He visited during breaks, always stopping by the dog park with Patton, who had grown older but no less energetic. He remained a beloved figure in town, and residents often spoke of him with pride, recounting the story of how he had stood up to Dirk Harrington and inspired a movement. Patton's later years were golden in every sense of the word. The retriever became something of a mascot for the town, his gentle demeanor and unwavering loyalty a symbol of the values Maple Grove held dear. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 14, the entire town mourned. A small statue of Patton was erected at the entrance of the dog park, his likeness captured mid-leap, tail wagging, a permanent reminder of his legacy. For Dirk, life after the confrontation was anything but easy. The scars of his past ran deep, and the road to redemption was fraught with challenges. Yet he embraced the struggle, determined to prove that change was possible. The work he had begun at the animal shelter became a lifelong passion. He completed his court-ordered service, but continued to volunteer, eventually taking a paid position as a rehabilitation specialist for abused and neglected animals. Dirk discovered a talent he never knew he had: connecting with animals who had been through the worst of humanity's cruelty. His gruff exterior masked a deep well of empathy that only seemed to surface in the presence of creatures who needed it most. Over time, Dirk became known as the dog whisperer of Maple Grove, able to calm even the most frightened and aggressive animals with his steady, unyielding patience. Ellie, the shelter volunteer who had first seen potential in Dirk, became a close friend and mentor. She encouraged him to share his story publicly, not to dwell on his mistakes, but to show others that change was possible. At first, Dirk resisted, embarrassed by his past and unsure if anyone would care to listen. But as Ellie pointed out, his journey could inspire others who felt trapped by their own bad decisions. Dirk began speaking at schools and community events, his raw honesty earning him a surprising amount of respect. He didn't sugarcoat his past, admitting to the harm he had caused and the guilt that had driven him to change. But he also spoke about the joy he had found in rebuilding his life, in earning the trust of animals who had every reason to fear him. His speeches resonated, especially with young people who saw in him a living example of the power of second chances. The story of Patton, Barron, and Dirk continued to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond Maple Grove. Animal welfare organizations across the country took notice of the Paws for Justice campaign and reached out to Barron for guidance. His social media presence, once sparse and personal, became a platform for advocating animal rights and environmental conservation. He used it to promote awareness, share resources, and highlight stories of animal rescues and rehabilitation. One such story came from a young girl in a neighboring town who wrote to Barron about her experience rescuing a stray dog she found tied to a tree. Inspired by Patton's story, she had convinced her parents to adopt the dog, whom she named Courage. The letter moved Barron deeply, reinforcing his belief in the power of storytelling to spark action. Dirk's story too spread beyond Maple Grove. A regional news outlet covered his transformation, framing it as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The article went viral, prompting invitations for Dirk to speak at larger events, including conferences on animal welfare and rehabilitation. Though he remained reluctant about the spotlight, he agreed to attend, knowing his words could make a difference. Years later, Maple Grove's transformation into a beacon of community spirit and animal welfare attracted attention on a national scale. Filmmakers approached Barron with the idea of creating a documentary about the events that had unfolded in the town. Though initially hesitant, Barron eventually agreed, as long as the focus remained on the broader lessons of the story rather than his family name. The documentary, Unleashed: The Maple Grove Story, premiered to critical acclaim. It chronicled not only the events surrounding Patton and Dirk, but also the ripple effects that had transformed the town and inspired countless others. Viewers were moved by the sincerity of the narrative, the vulnerability of those involved, and the undeniable bond between humans and animals. Proceeds from the documentary were donated to animal shelters and conservation efforts across the country. Maple Grove itself received a portion of the funds, which the town used to expand its dog park and establish a new community center focused on education and outreach. As time marched on, the story of Maple Grove became a cherished piece of its history, retold at family gatherings, school assemblies, and community events. Both Barron and Dirk continued to live out the lessons they had learned, each in their own way. Barron, now an adult, dedicated his career to environmental and animal advocacy, working with organizations around the globe to create a more compassionate world. Though his work often took him far from Maple Grove, he always carried a piece of it with him, a framed photo of Patton, sitting proudly in the middle of the dog park he had helped build. Dirk, meanwhile, remained a fixture in Maple Grove, his presence a reminder that even the most unlikely among them could find redemption. He eventually opened his own animal rehabilitation center, a modest facility that focused on giving second chances to dogs who had been written off as lost causes. He named it Patton's Place, a tribute to the dog who had unknowingly set him on the path to redemption. The tale of the biker who kicked a dog for fun and the boy who sought justice might have started as a singular event, but it became something far greater. It was a story of transformation, not just for the individuals involved, but for an entire community. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts, both cruel and kind, could ripple outward, creating waves of change. In Maple Grove, life continued. Children played in the dog park, their laughter mingling with the happy barks of their pets. The memorial garden blossomed with flowers each spring, a testament to the enduring connection between people and animals. And on the edge of town, at Patton's Place, Dirk Harrington worked tirelessly to mend the wounds of the past, one dog at a time. Years passed, and the events that had once galvanized Maple Grove faded into the background, becoming a part of its folklore. The town itself grew, shifting from a sleepy suburb to a vibrant hub of activity. New families moved in, bringing fresh energy and ideas, yet the heart of Maple Grove remained deeply connected to its past. The story of Patton, Barron, and Dirk was more than a historical anecdote. It was woven into the town's identity, a story shared during festivals, in classrooms, and around dinner tables, as a testament to the resilience of both people and animals. By his late 20s, Barron Trump had become a well-known figure in the fields of environmental advocacy and animal rights. His work extended far beyond the boundaries of Maple Grove, touching communities worldwide. He founded an organization called Guardian Bonds, dedicated to fostering harmonious relationships between humans and animals through education, rescue efforts, and habitat preservation. Under Barron's leadership, Guardian Bonds launched numerous initiatives, from establishing wildlife sanctuaries to funding community shelters in underserved areas. His flagship program, Companions for Life, paired rescue dogs with veterans and individuals suffering from trauma, offering healing and companionship for both the animals and their new owners. The program drew inspiration from his relationship with Patton, illustrating how the bond between humans and animals could transform lives. Barron's work didn't stop with animals. He became a staunch advocate for climate action, leveraging his platform to address issues like deforestation and environmental degradation. His speeches at international summits were grounded in the principles he had learned during his time in Maple Grove. Principles of accountability, empathy, and action. Whenever he spoke, he carried a small notebook in which he had sketched Patton's likeness as a constant reminder of what had set him on his path. Meanwhile, Dirk Harrington continued to live quietly in Maple Grove, where his reputation had undergone a near-complete transformation. Patton's Place, his animal rehabilitation center, became a sanctuary not only for the animals it served but also for people seeking solace and second chances. Over time, the center expanded to include programs for at-risk youth, allowing them to work with animals as part of a rehabilitation process. Dirk personally mentored many of these young people, sharing his story with them in a way that was raw, unfiltered, and profoundly honest. Dirk's connection to the dogs he worked with deepened as he began to study animal behavior formally. He became a certified trainer and behaviorist, specializing in rehabilitating aggressive and traumatized dogs that other shelters deemed unadoptable. Through his work, he earned the trust of both the animals and the people in his community, fostering a legacy built on care and dedication. One of Dirk's proudest moments came when a dog he had worked with, a severely abused shepherd mix named Luna, was adopted by a family in Maple Grove. Watching Luna flourish in her new home felt like a personal triumph for Dirk, proof that no creature was beyond saving if given the right environment to heal. As time passed, Maple Grove grew into a model community celebrated for its compassion and forward-thinking initiatives. The dog park, now officially named Patton's Park, became the centerpiece of an annual festival celebrating the bond between humans and animals. The festival featured adoption drives, training demonstrations, and a memorial walk through the garden that honored pets who had left their mark on the town. The festival also served as an opportunity to educate the public about animal welfare and environmental conservation. Local businesses, inspired by the town's spirit, began offering eco-friendly products and supporting community causes. Schools incorporated lessons about empathy and kindness into their curriculums, using the story of Dirk and Patton as a case study in transformation. Maple Grove also became a hub for small-town tourism, attracting visitors eager to experience the unique sense of community the town offered. Many came specifically to visit Patton's Park or to attend one of Dirk's workshops at his center. Some stayed, drawn by the town's values and the warmth of its people. Though Patton had long since passed, his spirit remained a guiding force for both Barron and Dirk. Barron, now a seasoned advocate with a young family of his own, often shared stories about Patton with his children. He spoke of the dog's courage and loyalty, instilling in them the same principles that had shaped him. Dirk, meanwhile, continued his work with unyielding dedication. Though his own life had been marked by hardship and mistakes, he took solace in the fact that he had turned his pain into something meaningful. He became something of a father figure to many of the youth who passed through his center. His lessons delivered with a mix of tough love and unwavering belief in their potential to change. As Barron and Dirk aged, their paths occasionally crossed. They remained linked not by obligation but by the shared understanding that their lives had been irrevocably changed by a golden retriever and a moment of reckoning. Each time they met, they reflected on how far they had come, not just as individuals but as contributors to something much larger than themselves. The story of Patton and Maple Grove continued to ripple outward, a reminder that transformation is always possible. Every act of kindness, every choice to stand up against cruelty, and every effort to build something better carried the echoes of a single moment when a boy stood up for his dog and changed a town forever. In the end, the story didn't belong to Barron or Dirk or even to Patton alone. It belonged to everyone who heard it and chose to carry its lessons forward. In this way, the legacy of Patton lived on, not as a chapter closed, but as a story that would continue to inspire for generations to come. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the biker's actions? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.